They must have found one, exclaimed Sam, looking to Japp. That's a bomb, not gunfire, said Japp. The roar of a British Spitfire overhead swept down the length of the train, punctuated by the repeating blasts of machine gun fire. Get on the floor, shouted Japp. Away from the windows. He crawled out the door and yelled down the corridor. Everybody down! Another line of the plane's machine gun fire hammered down the train. Suddenly, the train jolted violently. We've been hit, cried Sam. I don't think so, said Japp. The Germans are firing back. They have anti-aircraft guns mounted on flatbed cars. Another plane passed overhead, starting gunfire from the back to the front of the train this time. The return blast from the Nazi cannons bounced the train from both ends. Searchlights streaked out across the sky now from the flatbeds, hunting for the RAE fighter planes. Those are my guns up there, said Solomon, a headstring 19-year-old. Hey, Japp, I'll tell him to lay off the trains from Amsterdam to Lille, soon as I join. The British pilots managed to dodge the lights and sweep in for a cross attack. Window glass shattered through the car. German soldiers ran down the corridor on their way to replace those who'd been hit on the flatbed car. More blasts from the rear cannon jarred the train. This time, the Germans scored a hit. A plane spiraled downward into an explosion of flames in a nearby field. Through a machine gun bullet hole, Japp watched the pilot's parachute open, silhouetted against the firelit sky. The cannon jolted the train a few more times, but the plane's buzz faded into the distance. Slowly, Japp and the others straightened up and brushed the bits of glass and debris off themselves. It was now close to dawn. The Belgian-French customs office was barely distinguishable in the fog as the battered train came to a halt. The officers on duty were curious about Japp and Kreen's unique work order, but as soon as they saw the stamp from the first border crossing, they added their own. With the last papers stamped, Japp and his group returned to their seats, and the train entered France. A few of the younger boys were growing energized by the prospect of stepping out into a foreign country. But Japp was focused on what lay ahead. The upcoming moment of transfer on the platform was the most dangerous one. The Germans had many double agents planted in the underground. The Henry that Jean-Paul knew could have long since been caught and replaced by a pro-Nazi Henry, and no one would know that until it was too late. The station's cavernous gray structure rose above the sea of tracks. Men in berets pushed carts of luggage. German security police strolled to the platforms along with the many SS officers. There were dozens of strangers who could be Henry. Japp and Kreen led the group onto the busy platform. I think he's going to have to find us, Japp whispered to Kreen. That guy in the black overcoat is watching us, said Kreen. What do you think? I'll pass by and see what happens, said Japp. Get the boys off the platform if I stay away too long. Japp walked by the man. He stopped a few feet away and fiddled with his watch. The stranger approached. You are Jacques? He said quietly. I am Henry. Jean-Paul told me you like duck with orange sauce. You had it with him in Paris 2 weeks ago. Japp is the name, he said, holding out his hand, but you can call me Jacques. They walked behind the group. The platform was clearing now, and they needed to move away to avoid any attention. Henry, these are the guys, said Japp. Men, I guess it is. Maybe we'll see each other back in Amsterdam someday. Good luck in your new lives, but don't forget you're Dutchmen. He shook each man's hand quietly until he reached Nathan and Sam. I'll tell your parents you did great, he whispered. I hope we can be friends when I get back to Amsterdam, Japp, said Sam. I'm about the age you were when you met my dad. I know, Sam, said Japp. And sure, we'll always be friends, like me and Bram. Right, Bram? Right, Japp, said Bram, the last one to shake Japp's hand. Japp smiled at his friends. I guess there's nothing to say but l'chaim, Japp whispered, to life. L'chaim, Japp, said Bram softly, to life. After a moment, Henry moved forward. They will be safe soon, Jacques, he said, but we must go now. Japp and Kreen watched the boys walk through the train station and out the front door. They're free, Japp, said Kreen. The plan worked. It'll work even better next time, said Japp. Next time? I'm a counterfeiter, remember? Let's see if we can copy it. All right, final chapter, 406 Lives. Within 3 weeks, Jacques led another group of distinguished Jewish youths to France, and Crean led the next one. As their system improved, they made trips more frequently, for there was not a moment to spare. In the opposite direction, the Germans were sending trainloads of Jews to their death in the concentration camps. By the middle of 1943, the Nazi plan to exterminate all Jews was in full gear, and they were no longer bothering to hide it. The tide of the war, however, was turning against the Germans. A massive Allied invasion would bring an end to the Atlantic Wall scheme. The Allied bombers were already targeting almost anything that moved to the ground, making Jacques' trips increasingly dangerous. By late May of 1944, as the train rolled slowly through another bombed-out station, Jacques felt he had pushed his luck as far as he could. With the great showdown between the Allies and the Axis about to occur, he decided to cease his missions. He had made over 20 trips and rescued a total of 406 people from the Nazi death camps. A week later, on June 6, 1944, the Allied forces landed in Normandy. All of Western Europe became a battlefield. In Holland, the Nazis sent any remaining food back to Germany and enslaved all able-bodied Dutchmen as laborers for their crumbling war machine. Jacques fled to the countryside with 3 friends. They hid in a barn through the darkest of time of the war, the hunger winter of 1944 to 1945. Over 2,000 people per week died of starvation. The Jewish ghetto was now empty, for the Germans had completed their deadly mission. Any Jews still in hiding depended on outside help for survival. Jacques slipped into Amsterdam once a week with food for friends in need. By spring, the word spread of the Allies were close. Jacques was biking through town one day when the sound of cheering drew him toward the main square. People were running out of their houses, waving the national colors. Down the street, the tanks of the Canadian First Army Corps were just coming into view. A young soldier popped out his watch, waving a tiny Dutch flag. Jacques closed his eyes and drifted for a moment. It had been so long since he had heard laughter. He pictured Eli and Miriam running along with Nathan and Sam, and Brahmi waving to him. He thought about all of his friends and neighbors who had vanished long ago. He remembered old Mr. Mandelbaum. "We won, Mr. Mandelbaum," Jacques imagined saying to his friend. "The war is over. Amsterdam is ours again." The old man smiled but didn't seem concerned. "You see what I told you, Jacques," he said. "You like doing mitzvahs." That was a mitzvah. "It's what we're supposed to do, isn't it, Mr. Mandelbaum?" whispered Jacques. He looked out at the people of Amsterdam. "I just did what I could." All right. And finally, the author's note. I happened to have a radio on one afternoon when I heard Jaap Penraat being interviewed about his wartime activities. Jaap and I had already been friends for over 12 years. But for all the holidays, birthdays, pleasant evenings we had spent together, I had never heard a word about his heroic past. When I called him the next morning to inquire about his story, he seemed surprised and honored that I would even take interest in it. But I am far from alone in recognizing the significance in his work. In 1974, the Dutch government awarded him a war pension, and in 1981 honored him again with the Vechterkingkruis, the Cross of Resistance. On June 11, 1998, I was happy to be presented at an award ceremony for Jaap at the Israeli consulate in New York. The award certificate read by the consul general stated, "This is to certify that in its session, the Commissioner of the Designation of the Righteous, established by Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Heroes and Martyrs Remembrance Authority, on the basis of evidence presented before it, has decided to honor Jaap Penraat, who during the Holocaust period in Europe risked his life to save persecuted Jews. The Commission, therefore, has accorded him the Medal of the Righteous among the nations. His name shall be forever engraved on the honor wall in the Garden of the Righteous at Yad Vashem, Jerusalem." On the medal is inscribed an ancient proverb, "He who saves a single human life saves the entire universe."